collectors, and Predaheads alike. I want to welcome you to my channel. Now, if you by any chance are new to my channel specifically, my name is Glenn Taylor and this is Predator Collectibles. So if you by any chance are a fan of the Predator franchise and you want to know what you can collect, this is the channel for you, because I talk about action figures, comic book statues, prop replicas. And on today's video, I normally don't do reviews of comic books, but I had to do one for today's video, mainly due to the fact that if you pretty much are aware of Dark Horse Comics, you already well are aware of the great stories that Dark Horse Comics comes out with the Predator franchise. And I firmly believe, and you can definitely leave your comment down in the comment section, if it wasn't for Dark Horse Comics, we wouldn't know where the Predator franchise would be today without their involvement. So Chris Warner, who happens to be the senior editor over at Dark Horse Comics, is now taking part yet again in the Predator franchise with Predator Hunters, and this is issues both 1 and issues 2 of Predator Hunters 3. This is a 3-part series so far, and it makes up one gigantic story plot. I love Chris Warner as far as an artist. He's done a lot of good for the Predator franchise as far as Dark Horse. We wouldn't have the Predator franchise as we do now, because a lot of what is considered canon and Predator lore comes directly from Dark Horse. So when I heard that Chris Warner was going to write another story to embark on an already huge franchise that Dark Horse has started with Predator, I had to get these 2 comic books into my collection. So let's get started with today's review. I'll show you why I am so excited about this book. Now, if you are by any chance not aware of who Chris Warner is, Chris Warner is, as I mentioned before, now considered a senior editor at Dark Horse Comics, mainly due to the fact that he has been with Dark Horse from the very beginning of 1986, and that was their established Aliens franchise. And then when Predator came out, Mike Richardson, who is the founder of Dark Horse Comics, he actually already knew what the sequel would be for the Predator movie itself, and that's where they came up with the 1989 comic book Predator with the very first appearance. Now, I do have a copy of that particular first printing. I got it graded by CGC. It came back as a 9.6, so I'm really excited to have a 9.6, almost near mint copy of the very first appearance of Predator from 1989, and I haven't stopped collecting Predator comic books since then. I first read it and I thought, why couldn't we have this as a sequel? But I'll get into that in November later on this year. But moving on, again, with Chris Warner as a senior editor, he's now writing a story that makes up all of the entire big franchise books that Dark Horse has done, from Big Game, Bad Blood, Nemesis, Predator, and a few other titles as well, because they're bringing back all the characters in this storyline called Predator Hunters. And I couldn't be more happier as a Predator fan and a comic book reader than seeing all the original characters come back in a much more bigger output. So with Predator Hunters #1, you did have where they were actually on an island with the granddaughter of the Predator Nemesis character, trying to find out what happened as far as her great-grandfather in Whitechapel, England, who believed it was Jack the Ripper killing all these people, when in actuality it was the Predator doing all those murderous killings. And we also have, of course, from Predator Big Game, the Navajo Indian, who also, of course, was playing in that role. He has been brought back as well, and I believe his name was Herrera, but again, I'm bad with names. But it's been a while since I've read the comic book, so I'll have to make sure I reread it, but I'm really enjoying this storyline so far. So also with Predator Hunters 2, they actually embark in Afghanistan, where terrorism is running amok, and I was kind of wondering why we never got that particular part of our history as Americans to having a Predator movie based on that alone. They've done it in Iron Man. They've also done it in a few other films as well. I don't know if it's mainly because 20th Century Fox didn't want to embark on that kind of terrorism-based storyline where a Predator is involved. I think it would have been a really cool idea, being since Dark Horse is now using that as an advantage for the storyline. Now with Predator Hunters 3, this is where things get a little bit more enticing, because this team is hunting down the predators themselves. That's where you have Predator Hunters 1, Predator Hunters 2, trying to find out exactly where the predators are, where there's heat and conflict, and trying to make sure they can stop them and capture them. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen because, again, I'm still reading up on the story to see why everyone who's ever embarked on a predator appearance or predator encounter is now taking it upon themselves to stop these creatures. Now, the sequel to Predator Hunters 3 is, spoiler alert by the way, is where we now have John Schaefer, the former New York Police Department detective who was in the very first appearance of 1989 Predator. He was also in Predator Cold War, which also the female antagonist has also been brought back for the story. And you also have Predator Dark River. That was also part of the storyline as well. And John Schaefer has come back for Predator Hunters 3. Now, this is nothing against Brian Thies, of course. I love his artwork. I actually have 4 original pages from Brian Thies. So Brian, thank you so very much for allowing me to have Predator Life and Death original pages in my collection. Hopefully I'll be able to get Predator Hunters 3 in here as well. I just was looking at John as far as how Brian Thies was drawing him, and I think it's mainly because of him being retired and not being that muscle-bound Chris Warner drawing that I'm so used to. He probably is just a retired vet of the New York City Police Department, and he's kind of seemed like he's gained just a little bit of weight and lost some of his muscle mass. But based upon his drawing, kind of not liking it. Again, like I said, it's nothing against Brian Thies' artwork. It's just I'm so used to Chris Warner drawing a 1990s version of John Schaefer, all the way from, again, Dark River and also Cold War. And it's interesting to see John Schaefer in this particular artistry or drawing from Brian Thies. So I really do like that John Schaefer has come back. I'm really interested to see how John is now going to be taking part in this endeavor of capturing predators, and I really am excited to see what part 4 is going to be like for the next few issues. Now, because of this pandemic that has swept the world, all comic books have been halted, which kind of sucks because I'm still waiting on Alien vs. Predator Thicker Than Blood. I really want to continue that story and be able to read it. I'm really loving those issues. I only have 2, so hopefully I'll be able to have 3 and 4. I've already finished Archie vs. Predator 2, the sequel to that particular storyline and plot. And with Predator Hunters 3, with the glow in the dark variants, I hope to see more variants come from Brian Thies and also Chris Warner to hopefully adding on more storyline like this. But my favorite part out of Predator Hunters 3 leading up to this example is where there's a Predator 2 movie reference that Brian Thies and Chris Warner threw in, where you pretty much see just a severed Jamaican head walking into the limelight.
Foundation laid in the holy mountain. Selah.
So I really think that was a really cool nod to that scene in Predator 2 from King Willie being killed or severed from his head and being collected as a trophy. I just think that was really neat. But I really do love the story. I don't want to spoil too much. So if you by any chance have not read Predator Hunters or any of the installments of Predator, Bad Blood, Nemesis, Dark River, or Cold War, I highly recommend it just to give you an idea of what to expect out of this series. So again, this is just my thoughts, not necessarily a rant, but I didn't want to give off too much from this particular franchise as far as comic books goes or the story. So I highly recommend that you pick this up in your local comic book store, or you can get them directly from Things From Another World, which is again a Dark Horse Comics comic book store. That's how Dark Horse comic books started. It was Things From Another World, and then Mike Richardson finally decided to publish his own comic books and obtain licensing from other companies to help publish movie-related books. They've done Terminator, Predator, Aliens, RoboCop, so on and so forth. I do also have graded comic books, like I said before, original comic book artwork. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's not necessarily a typical review, but if you are by any chance a Predator fan like me, hit that subscribe button as well as the bell notification. And I will make sure I'll leave all my other comic book videos up there in the cards. And if you are a comic book fan as well, also hit that thumbs up button. It does help out this video and channel. And until I see you next week for yet another video game video, happy hunting.